He's an emulator on the speeches of Dr. Martin Luther King. He has spoken in numerous venues to include civic, military, schools, colleges, and universities. He possesses an embodiment of the vocal tones of Dr. King's speeches. He presents historical narratives on the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King and his speeches that were related to the historical era. He is also a singer and can be accompanied by a four-piece band or his piano player alone. He has traveled extensively over the United States with speaking venues on Dr. King for his birthday recognition or for African American History Month in February. Please go ahead and give a round of applause for Reverend Brown.
Thank you so much, Mr. Joseph Williams, and to all of the invited guests, Dr. Lyles, all of you who are gathered today, Mr. Johnson, if he's still here, Assemblymember Brown, if she's still in the auditorium, Mrs. Rogers, Mr. Longfellow. You said you were 13 in '63, I was 15. Longville, I'm sorry. At the television, my daddy, Mr. Willie Brown Sr., was the first on our street to get a color television. And and it came out in black and white. I was a star football player in the 10th grade. Coach Navi was going to present me with my varsity jersey, but I ran home from school, Fremont High School in Los Angeles. I'm from the hood, y'all. And I got in the door, and as I heard Mr. Buffon say, that Dr. King was not the standout. It was A. Philip Randolph, Benjamin E. Mays, a lot of other gentlemen before Dr. King, Mrs. Parks, who would bring Martin Luther King into the forefront as a very articulate, eloquent, and convicting, powerful speaker. I was very, very enthralled with Dr. King. I made sergeant one February 1968, just coming back from the Vietnam War. As a young sergeant, I heard Dr. King give his what's called desired eulogy. And I was an MP, you know, kind of carry guns and arrest you and all that, put handcuffs on you, just like the police, okay? And I was a day on, day off, day on, day off, 2 off, 3 off, 4 off, and all this. And I was able to look at television, the color television. Now y'all got what, iPods, e-phones, all these things they got. It was just black and white television then, all right? But anyway, same when he got assassinated, was able to follow that on television, and it was like something came out of the television, from his voice that is, and came into me. And since then, I've been all over the nation, looking to go to a historical point on March the 14th, Grosse Pointe High School in Detroit, Michigan, March 14th, 1968. The chief of police of the state troopers in Michigan had to escort Dr. King to that school to speak because of the protesters, and they weren't Ku Klux Klan. So they've invited me to come there, and I think that's an honor. I was there in Washington, D.C. I got 20 minutes, right? So don't worry about it, all right? A gentleman came up to me and said, "Reverend, that was awesome. My name is Mr. Harry Kurtz. This is my project over here." He's a millionaire man. Shook my hand, and I lost contact with him. Going through some things, I found this card, and I called him up, and I said, Mr. Kurtz, you remember me? I spoke down there at the convention center in Washington, D.C. when they erected Dr. King's statue. You came over and shook my hand. He said, how could I forget? It's going to bring me back there, so delighted with that. And in March, I'm looking to go to Schofield Barracks, Hawaii, where Pearl Harbor took place in 1941. So somewhere I read a scripture that says a man's gift would make room for him and bring him before great kings. I want to take you to before Dr. King was assassinated in Chicago. There he would experience more racial hostility in the North than he ever did in the South. It would have been thought of to see violence, those 4 darling young girls being bombed in a church for Sunday school. But when Dr. King went to Chicago, he was shot at. Excuse me. Jeered, spat upon, missiles thrown at him. He would give this speech. Brother Joe, I should have never ate that food, okay? Not that it wasn't good, I just don't like to eat before I vindicate. Yeah. I'm hoping it comes out. And then I want to leave you with is I Have a Dream. I normally do it with a band and a piano player, but I let them off tonight. And we're going to give you a little bit here. I just got a copyright, a patent. I own this title, The Voice of King. I have a book coming out, yes. Entitled, The Voice of King. So his speeches would go in this context, as he gets and thousands of people and mesmerized them. Oh, incidentally, Dr. King was just a short man. His wife was taller than him, but he had such great power of his voice. As Mr. Buffon would say, Dr. May said, Martin, you have a voice of conviction. The mantle is upon you to go into ministry. In case you didn't know it, since we're just talking about Dr. King, he didn't even want to go to church. And it wasn't Dr. King, it was Reverend Dr. King. PhD degree, doctor at the age of 20. Co-pastor at his father's church at the age of 19. He would speak in this wise. We must say to our white brothers who tried to keep us down, do to us what you will, but we will still love you. Go all around the country, spread your literature and say that we are too immoral and not worthy of integration. Yet we will still love you. Bomb our homes and bomb our churches. We will still love you. Come into our homes late at the midnight hour. Take us out into the highways and beat us and leave us there. But we will still love you. Threaten our children and beat our clergymen. We will still love you. We will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. We will so appeal into your heart and to your conscience that we will win you over in the process and make you bow down to the altar of justice. Love is our method. We aren't going to march with any bricks and bottles. That isn't our movement. We aren't going to march with any Molotov cocktails. That isn't our movement. We're going to march with something greater than all of that. We are going to march with the force of our souls, mobilize bodies in concern for justice and in concern for humanity. Yes, I don't mind saying that I'm tired of marching. I don't march because I want to. I march because I have to. It seems as though I can still hear the voice of the great Creator echoing through the distance of time, saying, love your brother. Bless those that curse you. Pray for those that despitefully use you. We aren't going to march with any bricks and bottles. That isn't our movement. We aren't going to march with any Molotov cocktails. That isn't our movement. We're going to march with the force of our soul. And that would be one speech that he did. Today at Moreno Valley, a young girl came up and said, Reverend, you touched me with your speech and your song. And it goes way back when I was in high school, in elementary school, junior high school. I had a teacher. Any teachers in school teachers? Thank you, teachers. Keep teaching. And I'm going to say this gentleman by the name of Mr. A.D. Holden. I buried him back in 2006. We were friends for 46 years. I met him in 1960 as a 12-year-old in the 7th grade. First day of school, he said, anybody want to do anything? And nobody raised their hand. They sat there just like you are. I raised my hand. He said, what do you want to do, Dennis? I said, I want to sing. He said, come up in front of the classroom. So when I finished, everybody went to clapping. And he said, now, Dennis, you got a real nice voice. So what are you going to do with it? I said, I'm going to sing, Mr. Holden. He said, you sound good, but you sound like the record. He said, you got to develop your own style. I said, oh. I said, well, my daddy gave me a guitar when I was 8 and I wasn't but 12 then, right? He said, you know how to play it? I said, no, sir. He said, learn how to play it. And get around some guys that do that. I said, what do you mean, Mr. Holden? He said, sing and play instruments. So I'm not going to sing tonight because I don't have my guitar, but I'm going to leave you with the dream. And a lot of you college students and high school students, you got to dream. If you want to go on successful in life, you got to dream to be the person that you want to be. So I called Mr. Holden in 1986 when Mr. Reagan had signed the legislative law of Dr. King's birthday, and I said, Mr. Holden, you think I can go around schools and do speeches on Dr. King? He said, sure, take a guitar with you. And that's what I do. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. But not only that, let freedom ring from the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill in the state of Mississippi. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. When we allow freedom to ring, when we let freedom ring from every state and every city, from every village and every hamlet, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, they will one day be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last, free at last, thank God Almighty, we're free at last. see, I got 2 minutes. No, I got 5 minutes. I went to Alabama. I walked across the Richmond Pettus Bridge. I went to the Rosa Parks Museum. I went to the 16th Street Church. I went to the Fred Shuttlesworth Museum. There's an agency out of North Carolina called the Martin Luther King Heritage Tour. If you ever look them up on the internet, you will see things on African American history that you never, ever, ever heard before or saw before. And it's behooving to take that trip so you'll know about your ancestors and the things that I remember. As a 17-year-old young lad out of Los Angeles, I went with one of my uncles as a pastor. We started out in California, went to Chicago and Michigan and Detroit, and ended up in Arkansas, and my grandfather sent me away from there. His words were, Dennis Morgan, these old laws get a hold of you, they beat you to death. Well, he probably was right, because I wasn't going to let him. But he knew that I didn't have that yes sir, no sir, step inflection type of attitude. So I remember he sent me down to get some ice. He said, now don't go down there sassing the white folks. I didn't understand what he meant, but I went down there and there were 3 gentlemen talking and they ignored me. So I said, hey man, I want some ice. One of them grabbed a shotgun. Mr. Longville, he didn't point it at me. He said, but who your kin? He knew I wasn't from around there. I said, Mr. John Nelson. He said, John? I said, Mr. John Nelson. He said, you go yonder and tell John to teach you some manners. That's how bad it was. That's just 50-something years. 50 years ago. 65. So, as you said, Dr. Lyles, the Ferguson thing, it wasn't back in the 60s. It's right now, a couple of years ago. We got to keep the dream alive, y'all. We got to keep hope alive. We got to keep peace alive. We got to keep the dream alive. Keep justice alive, and God bless you.